Moving on from George Barclay, and remember it's Barclay, kind of like the Sesame Street character or the basketball player. That's the way you pronounce his name. We're moving on to probably one of the most famous philosophers, one of the greatest philosophers ever, philosopher of this period, David Hume. Handsome looking guy in that picture, right? One of my colleagues actually makes fun of the way some of these guys look, but I guess when we look back, all these guys look funny, and 200 years when people look at your pictures, they're going to laugh also. Um, Now, David Hume is the third, the last of the famous philosophers known as the British empiricists. Remember, rationalists, knowledge is ultimately based on reason. We can reason from our sensations to the existence of objects outside of us, the physical world. The empiricist said, reason brings nothing to the table. We start with just our sensations. We come into this world with completely blank minds, and it's our sensations, our experience, that gives us knowledge if we have any. David Hume is from, well, another one of the British Isles, Scotland. He did spend a lot of time in his life in London and actually in France. And his most famous work, great work, is called The Treatise of Human Nature. Now, the Treatise of Human Nature was written, or at least conceived, when he was still in college. So remember, he was about your age for the younger people, the people who have not come back to their education, but the guys who've gone straight through, your 12 years. He was about your age when he was thinking of putting together this Treatise of Human Nature, which really became an epic work in philosophy of mind, epistemology. Now, David Hume is considered kind of the logical progression of the empiricist view, and in fact, with regard to knowledge and skepticism, there is a debate among historians of philosophy whether in fact he thought you could actually have knowledge at all, or whether he was really a skeptic. And he's best known for something called the problem of induction, because he tells us all reasoning to the external world, about the external world, is based on cause and effect. And he thinks we can't have any, we really don't have any concept of cause and effect. We never see the cause and effect. We see one thing happen, then we see the next thing happen. But we always infer from things that we've seen happen to things that usually follow them. But his problem of induction is, is there any good reason for making that inference? And some think that he was a skeptic in that regard, and we'll take a look at his views, his arguments, when we look at knowledge and skepticism. Now, with regard to free will and determinism, he thought that the two were compatible. In fact, remember, we call that soft determinism, compatibilist. We will look at and consider soft compatibilists and David Hume's view when we get up to the problem of freedom determinism. The other area in which he was really a great contributor, and at one point I was thinking of having you read the parts or good parts of the Dialogues Concerning Natural Religion, or I should say, was having you buy it. We probably will take a look at some of the things that he had to write in the Dialogues Concerning Natural Religion. But he's well known for his analysis, and especially based on what he thought about knowledge of the external world, about miracles, because he thought most people's religious belief is based on the Bible and based on recounting miracles, these suspensions of the laws of nature, the Red Sea parting, Jesus rising from the dead. And I'm going to have to rely on some of you guys to give me examples from Islam of these supernatural events. But David Hume, from a perspective of epistemology, thought that you really never have any reason to believe that there are such things as miracles. And I mentioned he talks about that in his dialogues. He doesn't talk about that in his Dialogues Concerning Natural Religion. He talks about that a little bit in the Treatise of Human Nature, although he really took certain chapters of that out, but his treatise of human nature was not exactly the hit that he thought it was going to be. You know, it wasn't the bestseller. It wasn't on the New York Times. Obviously, it was no New York Times then. Actually, maybe there wasn't, because he died in 1776. He's the only guy whose date I remembered, because 1776, for us at least, is somewhat significant. The year of the American Revolution got started. And he took out some of the stuff about miracles, some of the stuff about religion, and he held that off for his later work when his treatise was not so well received. He kind of repackaged it, rewrote it, rethought a few things and refined it, and wrote something called the Hume's Inquiries, his inquiry concerning human nature. And then he has another one about, since he was dealing with ethics, about morals. But in the dialogues concerning natural religion, he wrote this as a dialogue, and that's why it's interesting. We'll take a look at some of this during the course of the semester, especially when we're looking at various arguments that the philosophers that we've seen have given for and against thinking God exists, for against religious belief. But he's well known for looking at the argument from design. Remember when we were talking about, hey, what reason do people have, or what reason do people cite for God's existence? Some people say, gee, the world looks like it's designed. And he spends a lot of time on that argument, and we're going to see, it seems some of his views about that argument and the kind of inferences that need to be made are really based on some of his beliefs that lead towards skepticism from the problem of induction. But we'll see how that all works out later on in the semester.